Hello, everybody. Welcome to a group show. I am Janet here, Lessin from Aquarian Media. Theresa J. Morris was, we don't know your new name. TJ
Same
Morris.
as it's always been.
TJ
TJ Morris ET.
ET.
TJ
We used
Morris
radio.
ET.
We used Aquarian Radio and ET Morris ET Radio. JJ, yeah, whatever. Who are you? Theresa J. Morris.
That's the
ET
$1 question.
Radio, but now we're
many years.
media. And the Bret Lueder Show. We have Bret Lueder from the Bret Lueder Show.
Yeah.
We rebroadcast on various media, and we're expanding every day in every way and getting this out there, the word out there. What is the word? So this week we have Bret Lueder on the hot seat, the infamous hot seat. And we are going to ask him very interesting questions about his life and his work and what he brings to the table. So, Theresa, we're going to start with you, and you're going to ask the first question to the incredible Bret Lueder. You ready?
Great. Yeah, if I get my hair out of my face. I know. All right. So I am human, sort of. So starting with my favorite topic is, why are you on planet Earth, Bret Lueder? The ultimate question. Have you done your past life work? Do you know who you are in this life? And to make it simple, you're doing a book on ascension, but I want to know who you are and what you're doing here and how did you get involved with these two ladies of many, many years since 2012 on our Ascension Age tour.
You guys just want to start with the easy questions.
Yeah.
The
how'd you get here and what you doing?
Who am I is I think the deepest, toughest question for any human being to answer.
That's right.
Who am I? And the next is, why am I here? Why do I find myself on this spinning rock in the middle of space, supposedly, right? Whatever this is that we're in. The short answer, I'm not totally sure. But at some point, I think every human being has to draw the line somewhere and say, okay, maybe I don't exactly know for sure. There's no, God doesn't just mail you a letter and say, this is what you're supposed to do. So you have to kind of follow your heart and learn how to follow your heart and see where life takes you, and then see what you want to do and factor these kinds of things together and then go for it. And so, I was in college at Chico State University, which is about 2 hours north of Sacramento in Central California. And I was in a business classes. I was a business major and just really wasn't great at the math. I could do it, but I really had to try hard. And honestly, I liked playing soccer and drinking beer more. And so I had talked to a friend who was in public relations, and he says, you know what, you'd be a lot better off in public relations. She said, I've seen your letters and your writing's pretty good. So we petitioned some of the counselors, and this friend of mine wrote a letter recommendation for me, and I switched into journalism. And I haven't looked back ever since. It was a good move for me. I'd always written Christmas letters, like growing up, thanking relatives for presents, and they would always compliment me on the letters. So, okay, I think I kind of found what I need to do. So, along the path before I graduated, I actually got to meet Edward L. Bernays. And if you guys aren't familiar with Edward L. Bernays, he is credited with being the father of public relations. He is known for many things, like getting women to smoke during World War II as part of the war effort to get them into the factories and make bombs and bullets for the men who are out in the field. That's one of his claims to fame. There's many things. The CIA used Edward L. Bernays to overthrow the Guatemalan government back in the mid-50s. And the CIA was just then starting to use public relations as a way to win public opinion and hence public support for their, many campaigns around the world, taking over governments, toppling governments, and all the other intrigue that the CIA is known for. So, but during college, I'll tell you, they painted this guy as a hero, and that's how I thought he was. And so it just, as fate turned out, it must be fate. My buddy Derek his mom was actually Edward L. Bernays' secretary over on the East Coast. So Derek's mom, Janet Vondra, got to bring Edward L. Bernays out to visit family, but at the same time, he was stopping by Chico State because Chico State was a very highly praised public relations school. So I got to go to the reception on campus, and I got to wait in line and shake this guy's hand. And at the time, it was like, okay, this guy sounds pretty famous, but I just didn't really get it. And now looking back, writing a book about Ascension, and also Ascension in terms of public relations, looking through that public relations lens, and then looking at Ascension through that lens. E.L. Bernays takes on a prominent role in what I call the artificial ascension that we're trying to be steered towards. And so, I think that answers at least one of your questions. I'm a journalist, and this is what I think I'm supposed to do. So once I made that choice of being a journalist, I really tried to stick to it. And I'll tell you, it's been really tough, because the more books I read, the more interviews I did and talked to people that had come before me, that had much more life experience than me, where they were teaching me things all the time. I began to realize that the journalists that really made a good living, at least many of the mainstream journalists, were either paid and bought for shills, or they were so ignorant about their own situation that they were pushing agendas that they were just, they didn't really understand, and then taking a paycheck for that. So the smarter I got, the more I could see that happening with journalism. The more I got when I tried to push stories about human consciousness, especially concerning UFOs in the Chico News and Review, especially. I got shunned and backlash, and it's like people just didn't want to know this stuff. They only wanted to know like about city council meetings, and then what the city council was doing, and then be spoon-fed stories from Associated Press or Reuters. And so I was really disappointed in this. It culminated for me back in 2000 when I was working for the Chico News and Review, and they paid the editorial staff to decide which four city council members we were going to support, endorsed from the paper. And so we had pizza and soda and talked for like 4 hours, and we decided on a certain 4 candidates. And one of the candidates was one of my former editors. His name is DNA. He's now a comedian in Santa Cruz, and everybody liked DNA. He did events around town in Chico, and he was good for the community. And then after spending all this time and money making those decisions, the big boss, Jerry Von Canel, came up from Sacramento. There's 3 news and reviews, one in Chico, that's the original one. Then there's one in Sacramento and one in Reno, Nevada. And Jerry came up from Sacramento and said, nope, we're not supporting DNA. We're supporting this guy, Bertagna, who's a business candidate, because it was good for advertising. And that just really awoken me up to the reality of journalism really today, in large part. I'm not saying there's not some good journalists still out there that are trying to do their part, but in large part, journalism is driven by advertising and hence controlled by the money. And so that's really, when I saw that, I knew that I was going to have to keep a day job. And if I really wanted to write about the stories that I thought were important, I was going to have to do it on my own dime. So that's kind of where I am today. I've got 2 books published. Song in Your Heart, Story of the Search for the Lost Note is book 1 in a 3-part series. And that is about the role of the roots reggae Rastas, guys like Bob Marley, Burning Spear, Jimmy Cliff, and their role in what I call a global struggle for the control of human consciousness. So I began to see that humanity was being controlled on multiple levels, and I wanted to explore that. I thought that topic, and it's a wide topic, it covers a lot of ground, needed to be explored more in the mainstream media. And bless you. And it was not being explored. It was only being explored in books that I had to go hunt for. And this is like before the internet was really prominent. So, I'd have to go to there was a guy I knew called the Book Hawk. and he would go track down rare and hard to find books for me. And I love this guy, right? And so that's how I really began to learn and understand things. What the Roots Reggae guys were doing, they were playing music as a way to wake people up to what I was just waking up to. And I thought that I was fascinated by that. This whole culture is driven around waking people up towards the forces that were suppressing them. And then that opens a whole chasm of work and research that I've done over the years. And then my second book is a UFO Hunter's Guide. I did that in 2012. It was my first experience with a big publishing company, and I honestly, I just really didn't like it. The editors were overly anal about my writing, and the book deal I signed, which I did sign, wasn't very lucrative. I thought they'd promote me a bunch more, and while they did get me out there in a few places, I got on Coast to Coast AM for the first time. That was all great, but then profits just or opportunities just diminished, and then they sold rights to the book in 5 other countries, and I don't get any of the profits from that. So here I am, just kind of hard-headed and realizing I'm not gonna submit. So I decided to just keep financing my own writing and explore who I am. So that's the short version, if you can imagine that.
Great. Wow.
Thank you, Janet.
TJ, before I take over the questioning, do you have anything to follow up on what you additional questions on that? Your initial question or something?
Oh yeah, lifetimes of questions, but I'll wait on the past life and NDEs and all that later on in the show. Right. Go ahead. Ultimate first question, Janet. What's your ultimate first question?
We've done workshops where we just sit across from each other and go, "Who am I?" or "Who are you?" Who are you? So we could go do that for hours, and you'll get a different answer each time. I'm my father's son. I'm my mother's son. Whatever you identify as in this life and past lives, and it just goes on. And so, what have you learned about your path that is going to give you an indication of where you're going? So, where are you going to go with this, Bret? You did all this. You had these experiences. You made judgments. You made conclusions, and then it set you on a path of looking at. I guess what I gathered is the powers that be. Who's in control? Who's controlling whom? Why are they doing? What's your opinion after all these years of research?
Well, I would say that journalism, I discovered early on, was a vehicle to learn. And I realized that I was learning stuff doing my interviews, like with Roots Reggae guys, or I started to branch out into, I interviewed Jordan Maxwell several times, David Icke a few times, Michael Passarian, Nancy Red Star, Jim Mars, William Henry, Sharona Knight, my former Druid Priestess teacher. So journalism was very valuable to me because when I started writing, I started feeling less pent up, maybe less anxiety about society and the way I thought it was going. And so I decided that was more valuable than having to go to a 9-to-5 job with your social security number, where they're literally they're using that your labor is being taxed, and it's like you're being sucked dry of your spiritual energy. So if you imagine that money is the spiritual symbolic representation of your energy that you put in, your life energy you put into your work Monday through Friday, and then they're just taking it away in the form of Federal Reserve notes, that really rubbed me the wrong way when I saw that. And so who was doing that? Who are the controllers? Well, in a nutshell, it's the bankers. The bankers are the ones that control the money. The bankers are the ones that set the monetary policies, and the bankers are the ones that drive the business cycle, going from growth to inflation, deflation, and then recession. And even at that stage, I could see that it was being driven, but I didn't really understand it on the big picture. Now I'm like 100%. They know how to control that cycle. They can go from one stage to the next at will, just simply by manipulating interest rates or commodities. And then Behold a Pale Horse came into my
Yeah.
attention by William
William.
Cooper,
Mhm.
and he had a great little bit in there about how an economy is like an electrical circuit with currencies and charges and banks, and so there's all these terms, capacity, that cross over with the economics and electricity, and I was fascinated by that. So I just started studying money and banks, and then from there, you guys know where this leads. It leads to secret societies. Um, there's hundreds of secret societies. Just to name a few, the Freemasons are a big blanket kind of secret society, a bunch of offshoots from that, Rosicrucians, the Knights Templars, you got the Jesuits, and it just goes on and on and on, the Zionists. And when you dive into that rabbit hole, I learned it is really an endless a treadmill of information that comes your way. And at some point along that treadmill, I realized that this is like what the Bible talks about and other ancient texts, that there's a battle between good and evil, and that evil, while we can't really put a finger on exactly what it is, I know the Bible likes to use the metaphor of Lucifer or the devil, and that works really in large part, but I think it's a metaphor in the sense that there's a force on earth that is self-destructive, that is antagonistic towards human life, and it foments confusion and chaos and war. And so whatever that is, whatever tradition you're in, however you want to view that, I find that the Lucifer description works great for me in kind of the spiritual practice that I do with deliverance, and we can talk about that later. Um, there is something out there that doesn't like humanity, or has bought and paid certain members of humanity off so that they work against the greater good of humanity. There's a weird little clicking sound going on there. Can you guys hear that?
Let me investigate something. Keep talking. Okay, I
So
think.
so once I got that, wrapped my head around that's actually true, I was absolutely fascinated and wanted to know more about it. I figured I came to this earth and to discover the big questions: who am I? Why am I here? And I can't help but, and there might be multiple levels to why you're here, right? Multiple levels to who you are. I knew that I didn't come here to be a little sissy, you know. I came
Okay.
here to play my part in undoing this. What It's just chaos. What this world is turning into, especially here in America, and it's just diabolical what's gone on. Now that I think I see what's really going on, I'm that's where my writing is headed. I'm trying to write. I feel like that's my role. I mean, if it was so simple as to say God came and say, "Here, Brett, here's this two-edged flaming sword," and then pointed to the enemies, said, "Go get them," and I would do it. That keep things really simple. And I'm a kind of a warrior spirit, and but it's not that simple. And programming plays a huge role in this battle, mind control programming and all the various levels of mind control programming. And yeah, so was there some other question
Well,
couched in there,
what part of
Janet?
all that is you? I
What
mean, you're
part of
talking. Yeah, we're talking about you, and you went into like all this other stuff around all that. But what part of your
well
world and everything you're reflecting is Brett?
yeah, okay, so I touched on that a little bit. So I think I've played sports since I was a little kid, and I have memories, being like 10 years old and on a soccer field, and and opponents, right? You got this guy that's trying to defeat you, right? You got the ball and the guy wants to take the ball from you, and you got to like figure out how to not let this guy take the ball from you, and you got to be able to pass and use your teammates and move strategically and all this stuff. And looking back on that, I could see that's a simulation of war.
Right.
And so when I was a little boy, I didn't know that, right? We're just playing sports, and if you win, you were happy, and if not, maybe you'd cry and then go eat cake or something, right? And but I realized that there was a psychology behind it really early on, and I figured out how to defeat enemies. I had to size them up, strengths and weaknesses, and then like make it so that they couldn't go to their strengths and then attack their weaknesses. And as a little kid, I didn't really know what that was. I just was winning soccer games and becoming a good soccer player. And later in life, I look back on that and I think, oh my God, I was being taught how to do battle.
The battle.
Right? I wasn't in the
Right.
military, but I was learning the same kind of strategies as an athlete and just didn't know it at the time. But I think I was being prepared for later stuff in the future. And so to address your question directly, I think I'm a warrior. I'd like to believe I'm a warrior of the light on the good side, even though it's a very muddled situation. It's hard to tell. There's a huge gray area in between the two. But I'd like to think that my work, my writing especially, is targeted towards waking people up and helping them see the situation that they're in.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, that's not an easy task. I mean, I wish someone could just pay me just for doing that. I would be rich. Because there's so much work to do to help our fellow humans wake up to the control of the bankers. And just that alone is tough. But then you attach spiritual stuff to that those humans are being directed by spirits on both the good and the bad side. And it's this whole hierarchy down, right? There's the highest of the high spirits, and then they got their generals, and then their lieutenants, and then the foot soldiers, as TJ likes to say.
Ground troops.
Right? Ground
Being
troops.
around smartly on the planet, yes.
And so, I don't know what I am. I guess I'm at least at the bottom, right? I'm at least a ground troop.
At least a ground troop.
So I'm here to just do what I can. I try to resist getting the life sucked out of me by a quote unquote paycheck where you use your social security number and they just tap into your account, taking all of your funds. Everyone's supposed to be accessing their social security accounts, but they don't let you, right? They'll just wait till you're 65 and then give you back your own money. Well, why can't we access that money now? It turns out you can. And so I've discharged some debt in a few places. That's really helped me to continue my agenda in the face of poverty, because that's really that's what they're trying to do to all of us, is drive us to poverty so that we have to literally suck on the teat of the government, and then they can ration out their our own money back to us, right? Because we're slaves. So I've resisted that big time, to the detriment of my own quality of life in many cases. And I feel like that's fighting in this metaphor. It's not necessarily, this battle's not going to be won by bullets and bombs. It's going to be won through words and actions in prayers, interfacing with the spirit realm. So who am I? I'm a journalist that thinks he's working for the light, that intends to try to make a difference in this grand scheme of the battle of good versus evil. And I'm using my writing to not only empower myself, but whoever else will read my stuff.
TJ.
Okay, wonderful, Bret. I think you're doing a great job. You're serving us proudly here. Each individual spark, as we say in the spiritual community, has their own path up the summit. And you've chosen a very hard path, but I admire you for journalism. Unfortunately, in this world, even though we are the light keepers and the ones that guard the words, we're also those that may affect each other, and some more than others. So right now we're the power of three, and I do everything I can to help others with the Ascension Center, or my little club of community. So how do you feel like you fit in the future with our cyberspace culture here with our Ascension Center? And I've got Ace Metaphysical Institute, but I know that you had the esoteric guide that we're continually working on, or putting out manuals or individual instruction. But let's say we would have an event for others. What lessons would you be willing to teach others in your role as an esoteric guide in our spiritual community?
Wow. Um, well, I've never really considered myself to be a teacher, but at this stage now, I'm 55, and I've read hundreds of books. Um, I've written over 700 articles, many of which are on UFOs and consciousness and spirituality, music, and all things that affect consciousness. And so just to think that I could be a teacher is kind of mind blowing to me. But I'm very honored that someone would think that, and I can kind of see that now at my age, because I've studied so hard. I really have. And for me to understand things the way I do, I have friends that are my age that I've grown up like since college playing soccer with, and they just don't get the things that I see, and they're so clear and obvious to me now. So whatever I could do along those lines to spread what I know to other people, I'm like willing to do. And what would I have to offer? So specifically, I think a real key thing for people to understand is that the world is ruled by magic. And I first heard this from Jordan Maxwell, and I just didn't get it, right? That guy taught me so much, and I'm glad I had my time with him, but it maybe was a little too soon, because I
Oh,
didn't quite grasp everything that he was telling me, even though I maybe could understand it on one level. But that's kind of the nature of symbolism and magic, is that there's multiple levels to it. And magic could be David Copperfield or Harry Blackstone Jr., which pulls rabbit out of a hat, right? Or saw a lady in half, right? That's one level of magic. That's illusion is part of that. Um, but I didn't get the big picture with magic, is that magic really is manifesting your desired outcome given the tools that God gave you. And so when I really started digging into this, and back then I used to smoke a lot of pot and just ruminate on this stuff, right? I was into it. I had a Druid priestess teacher that was teaching me one-on-one. She closed her coven to teach me one-on-one, and we were just going for it, right? And I couldn't have been more thrilled. And so what I realized is that all manifestation has to do with three general tools, and that's intentions, symbols, and rituals. And it's the combination of those three things that leads to all manifestation anywhere on any level. So whether you're just some kid who's on a paper route, you're still using your intentions. You're still there's still symbols in your mind, like you take pictures of your reality in order to navigate, and then you study those to navigate, around. And then his desired outcome is to manifest delivering the papers to all the neighbors that have paid for subscriptions, right? That uses the same three tools. Or some high Freemasonic satanic priest who's trying to use blood and his chosen symbols to manifest a desired outcome, let's say of a murder of a politician, or if they're going to do one of their more general rituals is to forward their agenda, what I've heard described by many scholars as the great work of ages. So they're trying to feed into that agenda and manifest that desired outcome at some point in the future. So that's what all magic has in common, is those three tools: intentions, symbols, and rituals. And so the rituals are basically just acting in the physical world. So whether you've got, you want to stick to an anthropological definition of ritual, um, or you're just like I kind of redefine that because it's really anthropology that said what rituals are. But rituals, really, when you break it down, is the action humans take in the physical world in order to manifest the desired outcome based on and using their thoughts or intentions and symbols. And so that was a huge revelation for me. And so I find, and I talk about that in my lectures, but I find that's a fundamental thing that I think people should know about. And how do you take that practically? Is that I call it's what is it's what's called looking through your magical lens. So if you can see the world in terms of symbolism, like Jordan Maxwell, if you can see it in terms of intentions, or you can see it based on people's actions, you're looking through your magical lens. All right. And to top that off, because I study the law a lot, I realized that the law was really a formal set of symbols that are used to manifest a desired outcome. And those are all based on contracts. So I'm like, oh, wow, contracts. This is a mind blower for me because contracts, everything in law is contract, okay? You talk statutes, codes, common law, ecclesiastical law, equity, whatever you want to talk about, it's all based on contracts of one form or another. So then I started, again, I'm smoking a lot of pot back then. I don't smoke any now. I'm like over 3 years sober now. I started to merge the magic with the law in the law and form of contracts, and I began to realize that magical spells are really offers to contract. And so when I realized that, I was ecstatic because it really blew my mind open, looking through my magical lens to see what was going on in the world today. Everything is contracts. You could look at it spiritually, that literally we are bound in the flesh. Our spirits, our giant spirits that could roam anywhere, right, are bound into these little bodies. And that binding is like a spell. Binding is another word for spell, but also contracts are binding. And there's terms to those contracts. So that led to my belief that all of us are here by contract and that there are terms to most of our contracts. So then to answer that big question that we let off with, who am I realized that I had to start looking around for what must be the terms of my contract. And so you're talking about what maybe I have to offer to other people is this perspective, is to look around, understand why you agreed to come here and what are the terms of that agreement. What do you need to fulfill before you're out of here? And, I know both of you guys, TJ and Janet, cover a lot of ground in your work, but we all come together with this thing called ascension, and that's like it brings everybody together, because really in the end, it's immortality and ascension. Those are really the two big issues that we have to deal with, and that was a mind blower because it makes things so simple. And then once I got that through my thick skull, that ascension, immortality and ascension, getting to that next level, maybe taking this body with us, healing our own bodies and moving forward, as opposed to having to just do it in the spirit when we pass. That really lit my candle, because then I started to see the hypocrisies and the Rockefeller control of the medical establishment, suppressing health techniques, and really fomenting death. And here we go again. I'm starting to put all these pieces together. The medical establishment's not really doing what they should be doing, in my opinion, suppressing all kinds of advancements in technology. And supposedly now we're right on the cusp of the med beds, which is going to increase life for all humanity. And then you got the legal system, which is keeping people down. The courts are all corrupt. I've had vast experience with traffic tickets and seeing the corruption in the court. But really in the courts, they're just managing your estate account which is your represented by your social security number and your all caps name. And that was all designed with the ever increasing taxes, fines, and fees, sucking your life force out of you in the form of Federal Reserve notes. And then endless wars to diminish the population. So all these things are working together to create one situation on Earth, and that's to kill people, speed them to the grave, use their labor while they're around, but then kill them as soon as you can so you can take over their property. And so these wealthy people, the bankers, we'll just call them, the Illuminati is a common term that are used. That's what they're just doing. They're just siphoning off our energy over time so that their grand, great work of ages can come about. And so that, then it becomes, what is that great work of ages? And that's part of what I'm writing about in my next book. Just a second, Janet, I'll wrap this up. And that is that they are fomenting a system on Earth which can be viewed as satanic or Luciferian or dark or evil, where humanity becomes their slaves, and this very small elite ruling class and the spirits that govern them rule everything and continually feed off of us like we're cattle.
Okay, we have Thomas who's joined us in the chat, and he's commenting about the med beds, and now we're asking the right questions to stores and things like that. I didn't want to go past the med beds. Can you explain what they are? What are med beds? And also, how can we move past victim to empower ourselves to direct our own lives and not be, directed by outside forces? So med beds first. Yeah.
Okay, med beds first, and then again, you're back to manifestation. But med bed, I don't know everything about med beds, but what I understand is that there's 3 kinds of med beds. They each do separate things, but in general, the med bed is supposedly ET tech, or tech that a human figured out. Which, if you get into these kind of stories like Tesla, for example, these guys have some kind of a download from above, whether it's spirit or a high-tech benevolent alien race. There's a lot of crossover there, right? But so whoever invented the med beds are supposedly a quantum technology, which is the next level of technology, where you lay down in the bed and it takes a picture of you, like a 4D picture of you, and then it reproduces your cells to whatever desired level that you're at. So we're talking regeneration of bones, regeneration of arms and legs, organs, hearts, eyes, the clearance of emotional issues, and just this type of a general thing. So my information is that they're already there, but they're just not being released to the public. Now my email list is huge. So I've got guys that are emailing me saying that, I can, for $180, I can sign up for a med bed appointment. And I'm a little skeptical of that. I don't think the real med beds have been let out yet. And so in the meantime, I'm just trying to take as good a care of my body as I can. I'm actually just started day 9 of my fast. Haven't eaten any food in just over 8 days. And it's just water with a little bit of electrolyte drink mix. I'm a little shy on energy today. I got a little bit of a headache, but I think that's all part of detoxing, right? And so to empower people, Janet, for me, I can only speak for myself and then offer what I've learned. And I felt very empowered when I learned that the world was ruled by magic, and that it's those 3 tools: intentions, symbols, and rituals, that are used to manifest a desired outcome. So while I am not a master at that yet, I think I'm getting better at that. That's to empower people as best as I know how to, is to, without just giving them a bucket full of cash and saying, go have fun or whatever, is to teach people how to manifest. As I learn each next level of manifestation, I will teach or show my friends, whatever word you want to use, how to do that. And once you know how to do that, like I remember Ralph Ring, the late great Ralph Ring, Ralph and Marsha Ring, dear friends of mine.
Yeah, I love them.
Ralph used to talk about manifestation, where you get your head into the right place, that it doesn't matter if chaos is going around you, because your thoughts are so strong and you hold those thoughts that you're like kind of like in a bubble. And so you're like that guy in Rogue One, that Star Wars spin-off movie where he was blind and he just walked right through the battle. I am one with the force is one with me. I am one with the force. And he walked and he pushed the button and unhooked the thing, and then he did the job he was supposed to do before he got shot. So it's kind of like that. That's how Ralph kind of explained it to me. That's really the most empowering thing I think I could show people about. And at this level, I think just pointing that out is about what I can do. I'm not a pro at it yet, but now that I know that's the keys to the kingdom, I've been focused on that a lot. Follow up?
Yeah. TJ.
Yes, I'm very interested in the people that follow you and Janet and even maybe myself, but maybe they don't know all three of us work together, Bret. And at what levels would you say that all of us have been involved in since even 2012 as the year coming out of the Ascension Age? You know, that's when I wrote my books, 2007 to 2012, and now I'm history. So give us an idea of how you put us together. There's a Thomas Lynch very interested. He says he's watched you through the years, and he's very impressed, I guess, with the work. But Janet, do you know Thomas Lynch personally?
Not sure, Thomas. How do we know you?
Yeah, he's
a lot of questions. Bret,
very impressive. Yeah.
Okay, there's a lot going on in the chat here. So Thomas has a lot of good input. But let's keep the focus on Bret here.
That's what I'm asking, Bret. How do we all come together, and what type of work do you think he's watched? How does someone put all of us together in the same bowl of fruit, nuts and fruit? Right. California, Hawaii, and Florida, now Texas.
Yeah, it's arguable. We're all together. Or fruit, or am I a fruity nut? I'm not sure.
Exactly.
Right.
But I know I met you two ladies through the UFO community and studying the UFOs, and it was in 2012 when I released my second book, A UFO Hunter's Guide. Right around that time that I came into the knowledge of you guys and who you were. I didn't really know anything about you guys, but I was studying Zecharia Sitchin pretty heavily at the time. I was a certified Sitchin scholar. Technically I am, but I would probably need to be recertified because I haven't brushed up on that stuff in a lot of years. But so I was fascinated with Janet and Sasha's work, forwarding Sitchin's work. I thought, and saw what Neil Freer did with Zecharia Sitchin. And so I thought that Sasha and Janet were kind of doing the same thing in their own way, building upon what Sitchin, that foundation that Sitchin laid down. And was really fascinated by it. It's funny, Janet, I was just going through my notes the other day as I was writing my book, and Anunnaki Gods No More, I think it was called.
Yeah, that's our book.
That's one of, I think, 3 books that I read of your guys', and just took copious notes.
Oh, wow.
And then TJ, you interviewed me as part of that media kind of junket, I guess you'd call it.
My social media groups, I still have them all over social media, Facebook, but yeah, I still work on them.
So at that time I was kind of overwhelmed because I was on several shows in like 6 months, and so a lot of nice people interviewed me. You were one of them.
Thank you.
It wasn't until a few years later that a friend of mine here in Chico by the name of Harold Bauman, who had co-founded the law study group that I was a part of here in Chico.
My good soulmate.
I mentioned your name, right? I don't know what the conversation is about. I don't remember. And he goes, "You know TJ Morris?" And I was like, "Yeah, I did an interview with her. We've talked on the phone a couple times." And he goes, Harold, right? He had one of his fingers is missing, and so he'd get all excited, and and he's like, "I got to tell you a story," right? And so I don't know if we have time for that story here, but the point was, you two had met on the astral plane, and and performed some kind of a ceremony or ritual or something on the
A little
astral plane.
magic. Yeah, a little magic.
It was opening portals, something like that, right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
so he couldn't believe that I knew two of you, and you couldn't believe that I knew two of you that were in this circle, right? And so
Great.
when we get you back on the hot seat, TJ, I'll ask you about that.
Okay, well, we'll put
So
that on the back burner then. But it's a good story. So
it is. It's a good story.
Harold was shocked you knew me. That
Yeah,
shocks me.
yeah.
So I guess
So
he and I hadn't discussed you when I thought we had. But okay, you know, folks, you never know who you're going to run into. But okay, Harold was a veteran. I was a veteran, and we go back to Elizabeth Clare Prophet before her, and way deep in the archives of the Akashic field and aliens and ancient mysteries, right? And he was a lovely soul that was really into all his past lives. Really,
right, yep.
that's how I met him. Was Lemuria and Atlantis stories.
I
And we
credit
just
Harold with being my spiritual father because we talked on multiple levels about stuff. He actually was, he was in his 80s, right? Late
yeah.
70s when I met him. And he was done reading. He's like, I read enough books, right? When you get, I can
Yeah, he
imagine
told
what
me
that's
that.
like.
He was
And
done.
then after talks with he and I's talks, he got back into reading, right? He just got fired up. He fired me up. I didn't really know anything about the Ascended Masters, and then that's a whole can of worms right there. Ascended Masters crossover into Christianity, into Buddhism, and it's a wild mix of ideas. And I'm kind of riffing off of the Jesus story where Jesus ascended and then came back to help humanity. And
Yeah.
supposedly there's a whole another pantheon of characters that have done this too. Saint Germain, Maitreya, Kuan Yin, El Moria. I mean, the list goes on and on. George Washington. You mentioned Mark and Elizabeth Clare Prophet. Supposedly Mark Prophet is Lanello now, and he's staying around to help around, right, to help further the Ascended Master stuff. So, and then it's crossover with ETs with that too. So not only the spirit world or the Ascended Master crossover too, but ETs. And so, from the Ascended Master perspective, it's all just one big happy family, and everyone's trying to ascend. And that was a real eye opener for me too. Look, I don't really know if any of that's true because I don't like see beings. I don't claim to have. Jesus has never come and talked to me that I know of, nor has Saint Germain or George Washington or any of the supposed ascended masters. So I don't know that all that stuff is true. But being on Earth and trying to figure out who I am, I'm staying open to all this stuff. I catalog it, put it on the back burner, and keep it ready for quick reference if I need it. So as I navigate through this world using my intentions, my symbols and rituals, and trying to manifest that desired outcome of who is Bret Lueder, I keep all this stuff at the ready so I could draw upon it if an experience comes to me that warrants that information. So,
Well, Thomas says you're a great speaker, so he apparently was supposed to be here. So we'll have to learn
thank you,
more
brother.
about Thomas. So, Bret, talking about your soul, he says we're glorious friends and souls, and he loves our voices, our laughs, and impressions. So maybe that's what we were supposed to be here to share. If nothing else, it's just our level of soul and bringing love and happiness and, just synergistically involved energy, because that's how Janet and I got started, really through Dr. Lessin and Dr. Laura Sturgis, and people bringing us together through Spiritual World Network with I call it a spiritual metaphysical community, but we had Ascension Center and Psychic Network. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. But Janet, another question. We got about
Hey, we're running out of
15
time.
more minutes. Try not to sneeze.
Brett, I'm curious what, have you seen any UFOs or have you recalled any of your past lives? Have you met any ETs? What usually people who are on this path had some kind of aha moment. They had some kind of experience that led you into this. What led you down this path? Did you have any kind of experience on that, like that?
Well, as I said in an earlier episode, I have a strong background in science fiction, and going back to Star Trek, Space 1999, Star Wars, all the movies that have come forth from that, Starship Troopers, The Matrix, all those kind of sci-fi movies have always fascinated me. So if our viewers want to see that story, you can go back to, I think, our second or third episode. Maybe I expounded a bit upon that. But in my waking life as an adult, um, after college, I played soccer with a bunch of guys, right? And they all, they graduate and move on. One of my buddies moved down to Santa Barbara, where he was from, moved back to Santa Barbara, got a job as a civilian draftsman on Vandenberg Air Force Base. And then one day he called me up and said, "Oh my God, I got this thing. One of my coworkers showed me where to go on the computer, and I downloaded this document, and you got to see it." And so it just kind of blew me up. I was like, "Wow, okay, this is really cool." So I went down there. Oh man, it must have been late '90s, something like that, and visited some family. I've got family all up and down California. And as I made each stop, I worked my way back from like San Diego and LA up through Santa Barbara, and I stopped at his house, and he showed me what I called the packet. And we were up all night just drinking beers, smoking some weed, and just going over this packet. And what it turned out to be, and I had no idea who Bill Cooper was at the time, but it's a document that Bill Cooper called Operation Majority, and contained within Bill Cooper's own writings was an affidavit by John Lear, which exposed the Dulce base material supposedly for the first time. And I've been communicating with Sherry Hinkle on Facebook, one of the early people that were in on supposedly releasing the Thomas Costello information, whistleblower stuff about Dulce. But Lear and Hinkle are all right around there. Tal and Mary Levesque, John Rhodes, all these kind of people were all kind of around that epicenter of Dulce and that Dulce information coming out. And so in this packet, I call it the packet, because it was such a mind blower, right? It talked about how the Zapruder film, which supposedly showed Kennedy being shot, was really doctored. It talked about how the Greys needed to do cattle mutilations in order to get certain genetics because their species ran into a kind of a bottleneck where they needed fresh DNA in them to keep them going. Otherwise, they were going to die out. All kinds of stuff in this like 33-page document. And it was just blowing my mind, right? And what was very curious about that was that at the end of this packet, there was like 2 pages of, a little brief 1 or 2 paragraph UFO case reports. And 2 of them were from Red Bluff, California, which is like, it's like 45 minutes up the road from me. And that really blew me away because that really brought it home that this UFO thing was right in my backyard. I'd seen all the TV shows. I watched UFO Files, was big. History Channel has always had stuff on this. I used to watch Cosmos with Carl Sagan. So all these kind of things have fascinated me throughout the years. And so it's that packet really that really opened the door for me to come into the study of UFOs. And then maybe at the beginning of all this, I didn't really understand that it was all about me discovering who I am. But looking back on it now, I'm like, that's where it really started for me, was with the packet. And that's how it just wedged my mind open. I mean, hey, I was a regularly programmed young male, just like millions of young males in this country are programmed to worship sports and chase girls and drink beer and then laugh about it at Hooters at the end of the day, and so I really started to take a look at myself after that. There's implications that maybe I was abducted. I'm pretty sure I had missing time that night on the way home, driving back to Chico after that trip. I saw my first UFO that night on the way home at a stop off Highway 505, which is in between Highway 80, which runs east-west, and Highway I-5, which runs north-south through all of California. I just, looking back, I just don't think that's a coincidence. I was I was that steered the course of my life, right? And so I've been to many UFO expos, and occasionally people will walk up to me and go like, "I've seen you on a ship," or you don't study UFOs for no reason. It's not just that it's interesting. It's because you're trying to find answers to something that's happened to you that's maybe been buried inside you. So I've been told things like this for years now. I don't consciously remember being taken, but I'll stay open to that because us humans, we're in a precarious situation. We live our lives one day at a time. Memory is fleeting, and then when you spin mind control into it by people that are like pros at mind control, that stuff really works. When it works really well. And so I've had several hypnotists try to crack me to see if they can get me to reveal any information, and so far no one's been successful.
Janet and I haven't had a stab at you. I do past life hypnosis.
Maybe it would take two. I don't know. But so a good buddy of mine we've talked about before on the show, Stuart Swerdlow, he says it's because my programming is so deep that it's not going to be
and which reality
until you have the code, the key word, right? The trigger word.
So he means in this life, right?
Yeah. So anyway,
a lot of people don't realize they're hypnotized when they are hypnotized.
That's another good point too. TV, right, is the ultimate hypnotist in the corner of the room, I think is a David Icke quote. So absolutely. Programming can be very subtle. It can be very blunt. And there's just multiple levels of it. I look at it as mind control is a certain set of protocols that's trying to manifest a desired outcome. So mind control would be a certain specific kind of magic. And you break that down, the intentions behind the practitioners, they have their own choices of symbols, and then they act it out in the physical world by the actual programming, which we know is like trauma-based mind control, where they fracture through physical abuse of a variety of kinds. They fracture one's mind, and then once it's open, man, it's like a playground for these professional mind controllers, and they can put whatever they want in there.
Janet and I were working on the Stargate protocols when we met in Hawaii. They weren't quite over yet. So 93 was an important year for us, she and I.
Well, I just want to alert you, we're running out of time. You want to ask Bret a final question, and then we'll wrap it up?
Well, I'll try one more time. How do you see the three of us coming together? What do you think is our motive, our agenda, or do we have one? Are we just being people synergistically involved? Because we're all three authors, and we all have metaphysics and ufology and alienology. And you and I know I'm a journalist by trade, and you are an investigative reporter. Janet has been a researcher and author and librarian and great hypnotist with her husband in hypnosis. But how do you see all of us coming together in this reality?
In other words, why are we here right now, the three of us?
All right. The magic of now. Yes.
Is that okay? I'm always learning. And so I always appreciate getting to have time with people that have come before me, because your life experiences are valuable, in my opinion. And I love hearing about it. So in this triumvirate of hearts and minds, I see myself as a student. At the same time, I'll try to offer whatever I can to the conversation. And if through our interaction, people can benefit from that, especially in the tricky world of UFOs and abductions and mind control, which are not as mainstream as they are, they're still not very mainstream. I think that's a valuable thing. So the three of us together would be a one source where people could learn about consciousness and reality and answer the big questions for themselves. Hopefully help to answer those questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my consciousness? What is my real true spiritual power? And who and what has diminished it? Or that something is diminishing it. Most people don't even think that there's a conspiracy, right? That's why you still see millions of people watching the Super Bowl while there's genocide going on in Gaza and Ukraine. And maybe
amazes me, yeah.
right?
That amazes me, but also the culture of watching African tribes or in Borneo, or you watch Survivor and they're taking people on the Survivor TV show with Jeff Probst out to meet all these natives on this
right?
planet. I'm like,
Just a clash
somebody
of
drop
cultures.
a box from an airplane, do something, show them a UFO, you know. It's amazing that those people live in the same reality that we do on the same planet.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I can't figure out how to focus on Bret when he's talking, TJ. We'll have to play with StreamYard when we're not on air, because I wanted to, when you were talking, I wanted to pull you in. It's like, that's why I ended up, anyway, that's what I was laughing about. It's like,
oh, the StreamYard buttons. Yeah, we'll do that, folks. We got a lot to learn. Well, that's what we're doing. We're all students. We're all teachers. And Bret, is there anything you'd like to leave with our listening audience out there forevermore in the immortal world of the Akashic field and universal intelligence?
Wow.
You know, I think the biggest thing that's got me where I am is reading books. And I know more and more books are becoming like less in vogue.
Yes.
And especially nonfiction books that discuss our history, especially concerning wars and finance, and of course, the UFO enigma. And so I can only tell you what learning about the UFO enigma has done for me in my awareness of the world. And so I would just share that and say with everybody, read up on ufology, read up on banking, read up on law, and find out what money really is. And you talk about empowering yourself. When you find out what money really is, it's going to blow you out of the water. And this, again, it all goes back to Babylon, ancient magic. Economies, monetary systems are just a form of ritual magic, where the elites, again, are trying to manifest a desired outcome, where we agree to it. Again, it's by contracts, right? Contracts have to be agreed to, right? So when we agree to use this stuff, we are giving the big green light for them to suck our spirits dry through the form of Federal Reserve notes with ever increasing taxes, fines, and fees.
That may change in the future. You know, we may just use credits in space for those. You know, there's all those with the positive aspect that this isn't all there is, folks, but you may have to wait to the next life and you got to believe in something. So I guess, Bret, with me and you, we got to have faith in immortality and that the ascension is the way, the truth and the light for the light workers and truth seekers that somehow find us. But I like that this gentleman, Thomas, I was married to Thomas, says that we always find beautiful souls. So he must see you as a beautiful soul, Bret, because he's enjoyed. He says you're a great speaker and a beautiful soul. So he's been a good cheerleader for us. And, you know, we have those people. I've gotten really good feedback, folks. So thank you, everybody in social media. Like Bret says, he found me all over the place, and he's still finding me all over the place because I have so many groups and pages and Facebooks, and Janet does too. Well, Bret, so the new book is Ascension Public Relations. Did you decide on the name?
It's called Agents of Ascension, UFO PR. And it's just basically about how public relations, the manipulation of words and images, has created a certain narrative around the UFO phenomena. And it's not what we're being spoon-fed by the mainstream media or even Hollywood. Is not all there is going on.
So your intention is to write the book. Your rituals is what you're doing, and
get the ritual is the act of writing,
and the symbols,
the action you take in the physical world. That's the ritual part. So my intentions are to write the book in a nutshell. The symbols are the words that I choose, the symbols that are on the cover of the book, and the words that are coming out of my mouth. And then speaking actually is, I consider that to be ritual because it's happening in the physical world. You know, there's air moving through my vocal cords, and then certain specific symbols are coming out of those, right, based on the intention. So that's, even speaking is ritual, symbolism, or intention, symbolism, and ritual is the order, really.
So we'll have to have an NLP program. Folks, we've got so much to teach. So, Janet, I guess we need to close out here.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask
Let
Brett,
people
when do you
know.
think your book will be finished? What's your
You know, I
predicted?
had a little snafu last December when Windows 11 ate my first 5 chapters.
Yikes.
All
So
right.
I've been spending hundreds of dollars now trying to recover those, and I've recovered some older versions, so it's not a total loss. So what I'm doing is I'm just moving forward with the book right now. I'm in the final stages of parts 2 and 3, which is 13 chapters. I've cracked into part 4, which is going to be like 2 to 3 chapters, and then when I'm done with the book, I'm going to go back and see what I have for parts 1 through 5. So all this is going to take a few more months. Right now, I'm looking at speaking in Mount Shasta, July 12th through
Oh, good.
14th at a
Wow.
youth festival called the Immersion Fest, and that's going to be held at the Mount Shasta Board and Ski Park in McLeod, which is right around the corner from Mount Shasta City. Still on the mountain, on the big majestic mountain of Mount Shasta. So I'm trying to get it out by then. So we'll
Good.
see.
Yes.
We'll see what I do. It's going to be out at some point this summer. I would imagine, even if I have to do rewrites. Still going to try to recover some files here a couple more times. And yeah, the cloud. We got my tech guy. Sorry, mosquito. The tech guy that
I
I'm
do
working with.
that too.
He found that the cloud, and you know, everyone gets a cloud account when they order Microsoft 365, but I never activated it, right? Because I
Okay.
really don't trust my stuff on the cloud. But that night, December 7th, when my files went missing, my tech guy went into the cloud and it found that it was active on my computer that night and did 5 different maneuvers.
What?
So without being activated. So I'm
Okay.
pretty convinced my files still exist somewhere and that we're going to find them in the near future.
All right.
So if that happens, my book's out by July 12th. And if it doesn't, maybe by August. But it's coming out soon because it's one of the reasons why I think I came here is to produce this book.
Wow,
I
that's great.
see it happening. Let it be. Make it so.
Right.
Okay,
Well,
Theresa,
Brett?
are you working on anything right now? Any books or ideas, or are you going to any
Oh,
events?
yeah.
What's your
Yes, we
plan?
talked about them today. Is helping the three of us get a platform well established after 12 years, folks. People say, "Oh, I didn't realize that was you." They see my name, or even Thomas says, "Oh, pardon me, I didn't know that was you." Teresa is TJ, so to TJ Thurman Morris. But Bret Lueder is a well-known journalist, and Janet Lessin, a great researcher, author, and we're all done ACO event management. And so we're going to do something together, hopefully start teaching some things that people want to know about that are for those that haven't had a chance on this planet.
You going
Because
to Roswell you mentioned to me you were going to go to
oh, yeah,
Roswell.
I'd like to go to Roswell. I don't know any others, but I'm really thinking, because I was asked to be a speaker years ago and I didn't, but just the fun of planning something that we could all meet somewhere. And I always said, I've been there, folks, to Roswell. So maybe Roswell in 2024 is a possibility. And that's usually around the July 4th weekend. Brett, you probably know exact dates, but Stanton T. Friedman was the one that was asked me. And then the lady that was Charles Halt's daughter, I think, was helping with the museum, and a lot of other people that work there. Glenn Dennis, of course, I sat in his office. So, folks, we know a lot about ufology and alienology. So I guess, like Brett said, it was the UFO community that brought us together. And that has since splintered into various associations. And we have the UFO Association and Alien Contact Group. And we're all working in open source social media. So I guess we should find a way to come back here. Brett, are you up for it next week?
We're coming back next week and on until we get tired of doing this. So then I'm thinking if we go to at a certain point, have topic-based discussions, like we can even have guest people coming on. So we got a lot we can do together. I just want to say I was inspired by you, Brett, in your book, and I had taken a break from writing, but I pulled out my book called Cosmic Rights, which is dealing with the UFO phenomenon compared to what I had going on at the time with my UFO contacting experiences compared to what was going on in the world. So, of course, 1960 to 1963 was Kennedy and all that stuff that was going on. So it's a very powerful era, and I was writing it, and I had to stop for a while because it was evoking. I mean, I lived through that, so I had a lot of emotions around it. So I had to stop and like get centered again, and then put it aside for a couple of days and come back. So I'm like you. I'm aiming to get that done in the next couple of months. So
then another book for you.
Another book, and then I'm going to pick up on the Anunnaki series. I'm going to write about Nin Herzog, who is Ninma grown up. So I did Ninma, and then Nin Herzog is when she becomes the Lady of the Mountain. So for people who follow the Anunnaki stories, I expect that one will be out maybe in the fall. So that one will kind of write itself. All right, so let's wrap this up. We'll be back next week, same time. Next week, Theresa J. Morris will be on the hot seat once again. Yes, we didn't begin to finish you. We only got like a 10% of the questions done. I had yeah.
Right.
So,
okay.
I know TJ's story. I've been interviewing her since 2012, and I got a lot of the background. But
since 1993.
Bring it forth and do it now with Bret on the panel here. Oh. If you have any questions, listeners, you can send me your questions. Let's see, just email me, Janet Lessin at Gmail. Hopefully I'll get it. Do you guys want to look at any questions before so we can maybe select questions that we can have our audience? And anyway, it's an idea. Just email me. I'll talk to those guys on our email about the questions that the audience generates.
Keeps us alive, folks.
Thomas being here.
Yes, give a shout out to Thomas. Thanks for joining us.
Shout out to Thomas Lynch, and we had a couple other people popping in and out. They didn't. I don't know where they go. They might still be listening. Anyway, so that's it for today. Final words.
Bret, my people know more about you now. There's people that really like you, Bret, and they really do like the fact that we're sharing our past lives and our history on the planet. The people were saying, okay, now they understand more, and they really like the fact that we talk to each other so they could understand the listening audience. So I guess we're keeping it light, and they get us. So carry on. All right. I guess, folks, I didn't get to say it, but keep doing what you're doing, and we'll do our, I can't do it with this hand. I got Viking disease or whatever it's called. I found out today in my hands. Viking hands something. Little things in your palm.
You're supposed to be holding an axe. That's why.
It's Celtic. It's Celtic something. So I guess I have Norwegian in me. All right. Love and light, everybody. Next week. Thank you, journalists.
Now, and then we can talk afterwards.
Bye. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.